Spirit of Life is proudly sponsored by Mattress Oz, mattressesareus.com.au.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Vickie Janson. She's the Victorian State Director of the political party Australian Christians. Welcome, Vickie.
Thank you, Geraldine. Great to be here.
It must be busy times for you.
It's a very busy time. Yes, we're recruiting and campaigning and organising. It's very busy.
Wow. And how did you get involved in politics? You were a Christian, and you had a conversion story too?
Well, yes. I wasn't brought up in a Christian family. It's actually, quite a long journey, my story. I come from a background where my mother was an alcoholic and, never met my father, and so had a fairly traumatic upbringing, being pulled around from post to post between different homes. And so I never had any leaning towards faith as a child, but I guess when I do share my testimony, I have got quite a 45-minute sermon length one on YouTube. I start by saying that I had a song in my heart from the time I was a very little girl, and it's that song that some might be familiar with from the 60s, I'm nobody's child. I'm nobody's child, just like a flower I'm growing wild. No mummy's kisses, no daddy's smiles, nobody wants me, I'm nobody's child. So that was what I carried in my heart, and really until my late 20s. And I say that redemption is like God giving you a new song to sing. So he put a new song in my heart. So that's actually how, it was a very long journey.
It's great that it's on YouTube so the viewers can see that.
Yes.
And then you were called to politics.
Well, yes, some people call it a political awakening. I actually call it a truth awakening. I suppose I started to, once you really, I guess redemption is very real for me, because you start to think entirely differently and you start to see the consequences of life's choices. And I've sort of come from a background where I can see how important faith is, I can see how important family is, how important life is, how important freedom is. And these were not things I ever thought about before, but as part of coming to a new understanding of life, you start to see things differently. And so I had a bit of a truth awakening, and I think if you start to love the truth, you come face to face with Jesus ultimately, because he is the truth, but then you start to see things through those eyes, and then you start seeing what's happening in families, why it's happening, and you want to be a voice for something better.
That's amazing. And what steps that happened in your life that led you to politics?
Well, actually, part of that truth awakening was sort of identifying what's different about Australia and other free nations. I became very close friends with an Egyptian lady, Hekmat, and that's a story that I do give in a number of churches under the sort of title A Christian Response to Islam. She wasn't outwardly Muslim when I met her. She was an Australian Egyptian background, so we became really close friends. Our son had had a rather traumatic childhood as well, and he had childhood leukemia. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. It's in my testimony, but God did a miracle for him, and praise God, he's 25, now. But he was literally left in a room with a nurse dedicated to him until he died. That's what they said to us. And then God, so we had a bit of a miracle. So you can imagine I was pretty excited when I used to talk about what God had done for us. And anyway, one day Hekmat said to me, aren't you concerned about sending your son to school? He might get sick again and all this sort of thing. And I said, no, because Jesus healed him. And she said, oh, you mean Allah? And I said, no, I mean Jesus. And that began a journey into what I later learnt was apologetics. So this was like 15 years ago. And we began journeying, and my friend started going to an Islamic centre and giving me information, and I would then respond to that from the Bible, and we went backwards and forwards. Sadly, after 9/11, my friend threw on all the Islamic clothing and became what we would call a fundamentalist Muslim. And so I saw this transition and started attending lectures, Islamic lectures in Melbourne, to just see what was being taught and why this had happened, and to understand Islam. So eventually I became the author of a book called Ideological Jihad, which just means struggle of ideas, just recognising there is a struggle out there. And that was a response to Walid Ali's book, People Like Us, How Arrogance is Dividing Islam in the West. And after I read his book, I thought, well, it's not just arrogance and ignorance dividing people. There's real theological ground, human rights ground, there's a lot of ground. And so I started to document that, and I published my book in 2009. And someone from the then Christian Democratic Party heard me speaking about the issues, and asked if I would stand for them in the 2010 federal election, which I did, and of course that was a brand new experience for me. And since then we've rebranded in Victoria and WA as our head office, Tasmania, South Australia as Australian Christians. So yeah. So
I see, so you're originally Australian Democrats.
Well, we're originally Christian Democratic Party, birthed out of the Christian Democratic Party, but we are actually a new party because we our head office is actually in Western Australia rather than New South Wales. Yeah.
And you also stand up for pro-life values in your party.
Oh, absolutely. Life is precious. I think that if we can treat the most vulnerable in life so terribly, I mean, I honestly don't think that people understand that we have full-term abortions happening, quite legally in Victoria, and with no pain relief. We actually offer animals pain relief when they're aborted. The animal rights groups would never have this sort of treatment of animals, but it's very, really worrying. It's really disturbing that we have little babies that are healthy. They might be a gender-selective abortion. There's no, they can be aborted for very little reasons, really, and pulled apart limb by limb. It's barbaric, and we're very concerned about that. So we would like to see winding back of those laws for late-term abortion, and giving medical practitioners the conscience to freedom of conscience, which they're denied currently.
Yeah, yes, you really address controversial subjects that are difficult
yes.
to issues.
Yes.
But on that note, we need to go for a break.
Okay, thanks very much.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Vickie Janson. She's the Victorian State Director of the political party Australian Christians. Welcome back, Vickie.
Thank you.
You were speaking about quite a controversial subject which your party addresses, which is abortion. It's wonderful in a sense of addressing that issue, which is quite controversial today.
Yes, it's very controversial, and we have to, that's, I guess everything we say is quite controversial. Marriage, abortion, family, what constitutes family. They're very controversial issues at this stage, and I think that's why we do need to have a voice, yeah.
Yes, and why is it important that Christians are in Parliament?
Well, I think traditionally the conservatives of politics were Christian, and there still are, of course, many Christians in politics, but we're having increasingly less freedom of speech, and the political parties are being increasingly less conservative. Even in the conservative parties there's quite a strong left wing. We've got what I would call a new morality, and this morality that's called equality. And it's a kind of it trumps freedom, even freedom of speech and all other freedoms, freedom of conscience, freedom of belief. The idea that all cultures, religions, relationships, everything's equal. And we can't say anything, we can't favour anything. And so this is one of the issues that we have, is that we need to preserve freedom. And I suppose as a Christian we do understand that truth and freedom are intimately equated. The truth sets you free. Truth means the pursuit of critical inquiry and all these other things, that they're all linked together. If we're going to buy into an ideological position of equality, it means that we won't pursue a line of thought, and we won't say, well, one particular behaviour is high risk and it's not in the common good of people. We have to allow people to do what they want regardless. Like with abortion, it's all about women's rights, but there's two people here. So there's lots of issues, but Christians are underrepresented. It would be the reason why. We now need to have a party that is representing Christian values, not imposing them, because that would just be totalitarianism. That's what we're actually standing against. We want to continue to have freedom of conscience, belief, speech and association, and the laws are headed in the opposite direction.
Is it true that in Christian schools they have to employ people of other faiths?
There are. At the moment, the Victorian Labor Party has said, if elected, that they will challenge the Equal Opportunity Act, which allows religious exemptions. Therefore, then you wouldn't be able to. But there's already all sorts of problems with vilification, the charge of homophobia, Islamophobia, all these sort of things, which means that you can do something legitimately. People should have freedom of association. If Muslims want to associate together, if Christians want to, if you have a youth camp, you shouldn't have to, or a wedding service, you shouldn't have to, use it for things that contravene your conscience and your beliefs. These are big issues, and this is a debate we need to have without people being called names. So I think where we're going in our society, it's all about labelling, name calling, putting down, without having really a legitimate debate. And so we're pushing that line.
Yeah, I suppose that I hear that there's some pressure on nurses and doctors, even though they don't believe in abortion because of their faith, they kind of will lose their job if they don't participate.
Yes, well, the laws don't allow for freedom of conscience, so doctors have to refer for an abortion, even if they feel it's not in the interests of the mother or the child. And obviously it's not in the interests of the baby, but it's not always in the interest of the mother either. You might have a momentary lapse of depression, but the depression that follows an abortion, the post-trauma of that could be much greater, and they're not really getting any counselling about the issues and the consequences to even really give them a choice sometimes. So we're concerned that there really isn't a choice for a lot of women. That is one of the reasons when women go for counselling post-abortion, and when they're suffering depression and suicidal thoughts and so forth, and guilt and all that, they really say, well, I did it because I didn't feel I had a choice. So the law's not really allowing doctors a choice or really giving women a choice.
It's true. And your values, what other areas are you strong on in your party?
Well, I think what we're looking at is a vote for values. We've actually aligned ourselves with, for this election, to preference according to the life as a value, pro-life agenda. But I'm very big on this freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, belief, speech and association. They are the big things, because without them all other freedoms are indefensible. And we're just seeing, in the schools, we've got it sounds lovely, Safe Schools Coalition, but what it is actually is the normalisation of homosexuality and every sexual diversity in schools. Now these are minors, these are children still. Even promoting cross-dressing, boys using girls' toilets if they're transgendering into the other, feel they're transgendering from a boy to a girl or so forth. And all this focus on sexuality. And we really think that, with children coming out of school not being able to read and write, but being taught about sexuality and it's completely inappropriate that if children are left to their own natural, just left alone without encouraging them to come out, the 98% of them will actually settle into a heterosexual life, and that is actually not putting them in that high risk category. So I think that it's quite reckless to be promoting as if it's the same outcome. It's not the same outcome. So yeah, we're very concerned about some of the things being taught in schools.
Yes, because I suppose what children focus on, they can get more of. It's how the brain acts.
Well, yes. Yeah.
On that note, we probably need to go for a break now.
Okay, thank you.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Vickie Janson. She's the Victorian State Director of the political party Australian Christians. Welcome back, Vickie.
Thanks, Geraldine.
You were talking about quite a hot topic, a lot in Australia. They're talking about same-sex marriage. What are your views?
Yes, well, I think we have to take all the emotion out of it, Geraldine. It's very emotive, it's very personal, but we have to stand back and think about what will it actually mean, for the broader society. And I think Australia has a very particular history. We call it a sorry history. We've had the past Prime Minister Kevin Rudd stand up and say that, apologise publicly that we are sorry that some people in our community didn't have the opportunity, the legal possibility to a mum and a dad. So we've already recognised that it is a terrible loss to not have a mum and a dad. My only argument against same-sex marriage, and this is the position of our party, is that we believe every child should have the legal possibility to a mum and a dad. Bottom line, the children. There's an innate need. I was fatherless myself. I know the cost of fatherlessness. I know what it does to children, to society. They are at higher risk of incarceration and substance abuse and all sorts of things. Fathers are important, as are mothers. So it's not a matter of, two mums and two dads, and we call that diversity. If we're honest, what gives children more diversity is a mum and a dad. That's diversity. So let's be, truthful about the needs of children. When we talk about law is there to protect the most vulnerable. In the relationship of a family, adults are not the most vulnerable. They may want a child, but when we adopt children out, we give them to parents who it's in the best interests of the child. And surely the best interests of the child is to have something as close as possible, what should be perfectly natural, a mum and a dad. I mean, for goodness sake, we fight for koalas to have a natural habitat, and yet we're willing for our children not to have a natural habitat. So this is one of our issues that I'm very passionate about. The Victorian Labor Party has already unanimously agreed, if they're elected in this election, that they will support same-sex adoption. And I actually think that this is not the best thing for the children, not because gay couples are any worse parents, certainly not. This has got nothing to do with parenting, it's got everything to do with the needs of a child. We all want to know where we came from, our father, our mother, our heritage. We have programs now like where did you come from, and Ancestry.com's revived, and it's all about who we are. Identity is a huge issue, and the LGBTI community should know better than anyone the trauma and pain associated with identity confusion. So why would you impose that on a child unnecessarily? So it's all about the children as far as I'm concerned.
And what about protecting gay and lesbians who've been through the attacked through the eras, where
There should be. Look, we don't support any bullying. I mentioned the Safe Schools program before, which goes under the guise of an anti-bullying program. Well, I just think we should have a real anti-bullying program. Nobody should be bullied, whether they're, because they've seem to be obese or wear glasses, or they're this or that, or the wrong race, or the wrong religion, or they're the wrong sexuality, whatever people think. Nobody should be bullied. We support basic human rights, but it's going too far to actually celebrate things. You don't have to we don't want to bully obese children, but we don't celebrate obesity. So it's going too far in the schools to celebrate sexuality and things like that. They're not things that we celebrate. I think there should be a little bit more personal freedom to make choices without being judged as being someone who hates. I mean, my motivation is not hate. I'll be judged however people judge me. But my motivation is the love for the children. I have homosexual friends, I have Muslim friends, actually we can agree on a lot of these issues.
What are your views on welfare?
Well, I think that there always has to be a safety net for the most vulnerable, but at the same time, we don't really support a welfare, creating this huge welfare state. The best thing that can happen for anyone is to get a job. I mean, I came from a background where there was, substance abuse and neglect and so forth, and so had I been unemployed, I don't think I would end up in the position I am in today. But, work was a saviour. I say that if you're depressed, you need to not wait till you recover, get a job. We need to have jobs. We need to get jobs, get people working, because that's what you do on the way to recovery. The best thing we can do is work. And the best thing I inherited from my mother, who was an alcoholic, but yet I inherited from her a work ethic, and I always worked hard. It saved her, it saved me. And she later actually, 5 years before she died, she miraculously was delivered from alcoholism, and wow. She became a Christian. So, but her work ethic was what kept her going, and it's what needs to keep us all going. We've all got stuff in our life, and being a worker helps us while we get ourselves sorted out.
Yes. And what do you think of people with disabilities? Do you think that they should be working?
Obviously, everyone should be working if they can, according to their capability. Of course, I think everybody can contribute in some way, and we should be making room for people. But I also understand employers, if they're an employer, and a lot of small businesses, they haven't got they can't carry. They're not a welfare organisation. They can't carry it. So we have to help small businesses to be really able to make money so they can employ. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we're not all welfare organisations. So I think we have to really balance those things and try and I think that so many community groups do very well with all the people who have special needs. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with your party, do you all how do you all get support?
Right. Yes. Well, that's a bit tricky, Geraldine.
You're going to be a candidate soon, aren't you?
Yes, I'm going to be the candidate in Eastern Metro, and we rely totally on donations. And of course, being a Christian political party, it's not easy to get donations. So we rely on the goodwill of those who recognise how important it is to see Christian values represented in our parliament.
Yes. And how would people who want to help you, what would they do?
Well, look, if they could just contact us through the website, australianchristians.com.au, and all the information is there. Actually, go to the donate button or contact us, and we'd be very happy to receive that information.
Yes. Yeah. It's been fantastic having you, and I wish you all the best for the election.
Thank you very much, Geraldine.
Goodbye, and God bless you. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Goodbye, and God bless you.
Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Spirit of Life was proudly sponsored by Mattress Oz, mattressesareus.com.au.